Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I am Scott. It is a vlog for the week of 16 through 22 October. Let's go ahead and get started. I finished 6 books this week. I have read parts of other books. I have also avoided finishing books that I really need to finish, particularly for the end of the month. I made a semi TBR of Halloween based books that I was going to be reading. I have read one of them, The Witches by Roald Dahl. I have also gotten most of the way through another, The Bunny by Mona Awad. This book, um, is a large reason why I read other books this week, which I will get into. I have 2 books that I was supposed to read this month that were not Halloween related. I have read those, one for book club, one for a podcast. And I have 4 other books that I have read somewhat in that I need to finish before the end of the month. So I have like 9 days to finish 4 1/3 books. But let's go ahead and get started talking about the books that I did finish. The first book that I finished The first book that I finished was A Song in Her Heart by T.B. Markinson. It is a romance, a lesbian romance that was mainly I read because getting through Bunny was difficult. I said, I believe last week, that when I was reading Crime and Punishment, that when I am reading a heavy book, I need to have light reading to counterbalance it for me. So several of the books that I read this week were a counterbalance. I just wasn't balancing very well, not reading the books that I need to read as quickly as I can. But A Song in Her Heart was a lesbian romance about a country artist, an out country artist who hires a woman who is working basically at a diner to be her personal chef because the country artist manager is like really on her that she has to fulfill these particular uh, images. So, and of course, there is an attraction between the two of them. I say lighter reading when I talk about it, but it was a little bit heavier than I think I was expecting. There was a lot of familial situations going on. The romance between them was fine. I and it was something they talked about, but I tend to not particularly get into it very well when there's a power imbalance in a relationship, and I understand that that happens in a lot of book relationships and a lot of actual relationships. But I will say that they handled it as about as well as they could have, considering the type of relationship it was. I just I think it was just a little too heavy for what I was expecting and a little too dark. And overall, it was fine, but I would say that the author isn't one that I would necessarily read again. But it turns out I did, even though I didn't look at the name when I picked the book that I was reading. So but this one is a 3 star. It was decent. It was decent. So I think I am clean, Wash. Book number 2. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to reach over you. Book number 2 ends my quest. It is The Burden by Agatha Christie. Writing is Mary Westmacott. It is the final Mary Westmacott book. I can complete my 5-year battle Agatha Christie. I have read all the Westmacotts. I will say This is the best Mary Westmacott book. And I will also say it's actually a decent book. Even the best one before this, I believe The Rose and the Yew Tree, was the best Mary Westmacott book before this. It was still, I would say, a bad book. And I won't even get started on A Daughter's a Daughter. The Burden kind of borrows a little bit of a plot point from Five Little Pigs about a sister who greatly dislikes her sister, and something changes. Okay, I watched. Oh, you slipped. And she basically becomes her protector. That's not much of a borrow from Five Little Pigs, but when I read it, it was the first thing I thought of. I will say I expected the older sister to be like always over her shoulder, and she wasn't. She basically wanted what was best for her sister. It is an Agatha Christie book, so the family is not going to be like super sweet to each other, but for Agatha Christie family, the siblings were fine. The parents were awful, but luckily they died pretty early on, so that was good. Which, I mean, is a horrible thing to say, but it's good for an Agatha Christie book because a lot of parents in Christie books suck. It basically, I, it's hard to explain. The largest part of the book, in the part that I usually hate in Mary Westmacott books, is about the childhood, but that's the best part of the book. Is basically about, and I've forgotten her name, about Laura, uh, because her brother had died, and her brother was the golden child, and her parents didn't really think much of Laura, and were fairly good about letting people know this. Uh, but yeah, the best part is her growing up and dealing with how her family views her, and dealing with a next door neighbor who is nicknamed Baldy, who is a Christie character, but the dynamic between the two characters works really well. Usually, that's the type of character that I would be rolling my eyes at and really dislike, but I think it works pretty well. But of course, he knows somehow things that she should and shouldn't do, but doesn't say it. But just the dynamic is just really good. So I'm able to kind of go like, okay, I'll look past it. And then we zoom past like until Shirley, the younger sister, is about 19, and then she meets a young man who is a Christie young beau who like isn't like horrible to Shirley, but he doesn't like really put a lot of effort in, and so of course she's very attracted to him, and they get married, and something happens there, and then we go in the future, and it's basically, I will say I probably would have rated this like a 4 star or so, but the end part just kind of loses me a bit, and an introduction of a character who we hadn't seen before, and mainly seen through his point of view. And I just like, well, you lost me there, but I have so much goodwill towards the first, really 2/3 of the book, I would say, that I'm like, okay, yeah, it wasn't great, the ending, but I can forgive it. Don't mess with that. And I'll take it. This is definitely the book to end the Westmacott books on. I'm going to give it a 3.5 stars. Pretty good book, but am I ever going to read a Mary Westmacott book again? Probably not. The third book that I finished, and I only have 3 Halloween books left to read, because the third book that I finished is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I started reading this in physical form, and I finished it up on audiobook. Basically, Mary Cat and her sister and their uncle live in a house, and they're very disconnected from everybody in their village. They don't really see any of them, except Mary Cat will go out like once or twice a week and do shopping, and people are either afraid to talk to her or kind of bully her. The sister, Constance, I believe, is essentially agoraphobic at this point. She had been accused of murder and acquitted for the deaths of their parents and their younger brother and their aunt. Their uncle also was poisoned, but he survived. And it's basically about their existence in this house until a cousin shows up, the father's brother, his son after his father died comes, and he's basically looking for some money because Mary Cat and Constance's father had quite a bit of money, and it's about what happened there. It is a Shirley Jackson book, and I say that I've only read a few books, but I think if you read just even a little bit of Shirley Jackson, you kind of get her vibe, and it's essentially a gothic tale, and it's narrated by Mary Cat, so it's told from her point of view, and you'll see pretty soon if you haven't read it yet. If you start reading it, Mary Cat's a little different. I appreciate that as a narrator. Obviously, not a reliable narrator, which I will say I was fine with in this book, but I'm having a lot of problem with it in this book. Is it weird for me to say that I like the dynamic between Mary Cat and her sister? Because I mean, by the end of the book, I don't know that's something you're just like, oh, they love each other, but I do like it. I do think that it could have been longer. I do think essentially it ended abruptly. You are going to be left without some questions answered. And that's just one of the things you have to decide if you're okay with that. I will say, very atmospheric book, does it perfectly. Shirley Jackson is very good at that. Yeah, I just really liked it. I'm gonna go ahead and give it. I'm gonna say 4.5 stars. The next book I read was another Fluff book because Bunny's kicking my ass. It is Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. Becky Albertalli, if you don't know, and I didn't know before I picked this book, just one of those things. It's on Kindle Unlimited. I can read it for free. Kindle Unlimited say, hey, we think you'd like this. I'm like, look it up. Yeah, sounds good. But she is also the author of the book that the movie Love, Simon was based on. It's not Love, Simon, the book, but it was called something with Simon that I can't remember the title of. It is about Imogen. She is 18. She's a high school senior. She's going to be going to college next year. She goes to visit her best friend at college and basically stay there with her a little bit. She has been avoiding seeing uh, her friend Lily, I believe. That's the problem with reading so many books. I dropped the names. But Lily is gay. Uh, Imogen's sister is gay. Some of her best friends are all LGBTQ, and she is like a member of the LGBT support group at her school. She is straight, but she goes to college and she meets Lily's friend, and she starts to develop an attraction to one of the girls there, and she's wondering, am I as straight as I think I am, or is this just something I'm doing? Because a problem that Imogen, and I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but that's how I'm pronouncing it, is a problem that she has is that she is an ally, and she also feels like maybe she's doing the ally thing wrong. Maybe she's being too in or not supportive enough or whatever. Or and she has a friend who is a gatekeeper, and this is how you must gay. And very unlikable character, I think. Um, but I identify with Imogen in that ally thing. Although I'll be honest, I hate the word ally. I don't know what the quite the word is. I kind of feel like is calling myself an ally too much or whatever. But uh, I have a bisexual daughter. I have lots of family members who are LGBTQ, and so that's part of the reasons why if I read this stuff, I identify with the like the lesbian characters. Well, not identify, but those are like I have a stepdaughter also who is a lesbian, so that's what I'm used to, and I've never had boys in this house, so I'm just used to girls. So that's one of the reasons if I'm going to read this type of book, sometimes I'll just go to these types of books. But she has, questions about what am I doing right or wrong about an ally. And it's like, I felt that. So I really identify with that. I will have to say that if you're looking to read this, I will say there are no sex scenes. There's some closeness, but again, Imogen's high school, I felt a little bit uncomfortable with that. I mean, that's probably just a me thing, and that would be something like if she was even in her young 20s, I don't think I would have felt uncomfortable with it. But I really liked the book. I identified with Imogene for a lot of reasons. It's like, well, that's me in a different universe, I think. But I was going to give it a 4. I think I'm going to give it a 4.5. I just really liked it, and I just felt uncomfortable with the fact that she was a high school student. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't think, if I read romances, I really need to be reading high school romances. I'm too old for that. And also, I'm far enough away from that I just kind of like do this kind of thing with some of the stuff. Like, oh, I've been there. But the next book, also a fluff book, Bunny's really kicking my ass, is All Wrapped Up in You by T.B. Markinson and Adrian J. Smith. I didn't look at the authors when I was on Kindle Unlimited. I saw it as like, okay, lesbian romance, bookstore, okay. Bookstores will get me every time. It was okay. Again, power dynamic relationship. I You have like the older grumpy character, and I got to be honest. Usually, I'm cool with what they call it, the grumpy sunshine. She didn't really grow on me as much as it usually happens in these types of books, but it was fine. I will say this is going to kill me, and I'm reading a mystery book right now, like a mystery book, a cozy mystery set in now, and if it happens in this one too, I'm going to be so annoyed. But cameras, don't write the type of book where if you had a camera, it would help, and don't have the people don't do it. Don't tell me, oh, they don't have enough money. You can get some little dinky ass cameras for like 25 bucks each. And also, you run a bookstore that is part of a chain that is owned by your father. You telling me you can't get cameras? Also, the reason you needed those cameras, guessed it right away. I don't know if she was or they if they were like not trying to hide it at all, but it's like, oh yeah, that's the person that's doing the thing. That was really annoying. That really gets my nerves. If you're gonna write a book set in modern times, you have to at least think: is modern technology something that I need to worry about in my book? And I think it was the case here. And they did use cameras. They didn't use them till late in the novel for plot point purposes, and their excuses for it were not good enough. It was fine. I think the romance highlight of this week was Imogen, obviously. And this one was a 3 star. It was okay. The last book I finished, and I have said I finished this book before, but it says the collected short stories of Guy de Maupassant, Volume 8. I said I finished Volume 8 before, like what the heck was that? At the beginning of the month, it was actually Volume 7. So I did not complete Volume 8 then. I have now. I listened to this one pretty much on audiobook. I read some of it on Kindle. It's another collection of short stories, and it's this author, so generally the stories are not going to have happy endings. And often the stories are going to have abrupt endings. It's like, oh, oh no, it's ended. I will talk about some of the stories. I won't talk about them all. The first story in the collection is called Clochette. It's about an old woman who dies, and after she dies, the doctor tells a story about her when she was young and uh, protected her virtue, and that was the story. Okay, it's seriously that was it. The Legion of Honor was a story I kind of liked. It was, again, with a lot of the stories in this collection, it was very short, but it was a man who basically he wants a Legion of Honor medal, and he gets it, but he doesn't really deserve it. And it's basically about who you know, and that's what the story is about. The test is um, a man and his wife discuss neighbors, and she says bad things about the wife, and the man says, you can't know that. And she says, of course I know. You're a man, you're foolish. And he says, I would know. And basically she says, basically insinuates that she has done something and he didn't know. And so he starts thinking about it really, really, really hard. And he contacts a friend who his wife has basically said he cannot come here anymore. Horrible, not even an attempt at a French accent there. I just like, yeah. Um, he cannot come here anymore. So he basically goes to get the friend, brings him there, and it's uncomfortable, but we don't know if anything actually happened between the two of them. But yeah, something probably happened between the two of them. And that's a story. His Avenger. A man has a friend who marries a woman, and the man finds the woman beautiful, so he flirts with her and propositions her, and she turns him away, and he does that for a little bit and keeps going on, and eventually the husband dies, and then the man ends up marrying the woman, and they talk about whether or not she has ever betrayed the husband before, and then she says that she has, and then the man gets really upset, her doing something that he had wanted her to do before with him. The spasm is almost like a horror story. A young girl is buried alive, but she gets out because somebody tries to rob her grave and basically releases her. But her father, seeing her, develops a spasm in his hand, and I'm like, oh, this is getting really good. It's like, okay, let's all go inside, guys, and the story ended. Yeah, there were no stories like the terror that there were in volume 7, where it's just like, oh, this is a story to read in October. This is more like, oh, this is a story to, oh, it's done. Okay. In the Wood was possibly my favorite story in here. Another story that kind of ends abruptly, but a man and woman are caught cavorting in the woods, and they are brought before the mayor. And the man and the woman are in their 50s, and basically, after their long life together, and they are married, uh, the woman wants to recapture some of her youth, and that's a story. But it was just a really nice story. All over is about a man who gets an invitation to eat with an uh, ex paramour of his. They are both like in their 50s or 60s, maybe or late 50s, and he is described at the beginning of the story as very good looking. He has gray hair, but other than that, he looks quite the dashing Frenchman. She is an old woman, but she has a daughter that looks exactly like her when the old woman was that age. And I expected this to go one way where it was like, oh man, this old man's going to start trying to get with the daughter. But no, it just made him kind of face his own old age. And, he looks in the mirror at the end, he just sees this old man there. And it's like, oh, okay. That was a more complete short story than what I expect from this author. In The Parrot is about a woman who marries uh, a man who beats her and harasses her and curses her. And eventually it is believed, dies in a shipwreck. And at some point, she buys a parrot, and of course, parrots can talk. And one day, the parrot starts yelling at her, and she thinks it's her husband. And it's like, there are so many stories in this collection that I'm like, oh, these could be really good. And at the point where it's like, okay, it's really starting to get going, it ends. So, I mean, a lot of it is just really interesting character sketches, but I want more. But I'm kind of in it now. This is volume 8. There are 5 more volumes. The stories are pretty short, so it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna finish this before the end of the year. So, but as I said, I am reading Bunny also. I told somebody that this one is either a 1 star or a 5 star. I still don't know yet. Um, it's taking my ability to be okay with an unreliable narrator and really pushing it to the brink. I, I'm not going to say too much because there's so much I want to say, but I really need to wait till I finish it. It's like a little bit over 300 pages. I'm almost at the 200 page mark. I am reading. I can't remember what the name it is. I'm reading a cozy mystery. It's like two parts sugar, one part murder. The interesting thing about it, when I didn't know when I started reading, because it's a Kindle Unlimited book, I basically just like, decent ratings. Okay, there's the plot. Sure. But she is a black woman, and it's like, wow, I don't really see a lot of people of color in cozy mysteries, but it's starting off rough only because she is coming across really shallow at the beginning. And I understand because she's going to develop, but it's really pushing it. But I'm not that far in, and it's like cozy mystery. Also, it's like, and I don't really watch these because there's not a lot of them are Christmas based, but it's almost like a Hallmark mystery, like one of those series uh, where the person is like the town baker, but also takes time to solve murders. It seems like it's kind of like that. And of course, it's got a huge ass dog, which, it's like, usually if you could involve a pet, it's a good start. So that one's interesting. As I said, I have three other books that I need to finish in my Halloween reads. I have progressed in them, but I really need to finish these books and finish Bunny. So I will stop going like, well, I have to counterbalance with fluff reading, so I can just concentrate on these books. So because I think I'm at 17 books for the month, but I haven't read any of the books that I foolishly said that I would read. Again, this is why I tell myself not to do TBRs, because it stresses me out. So that is it for this week. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, say something to Wash. Don't you even do it, dude. He always makes himself known during these videos. It, he was not anywhere near me when I started setting this up, and then there he is. I will talk to you next time. Seriously, dude?